Hi, I'm Charles Malki, biologist and plant expert with IVORganics 3-in-1 Tree Guard Paint, and today we're going to be discussing the 3, 5, and 10 different things you can be doing and looking out for when in your garden. The first 3, and the reason I grouped them was your first 3 are your most important, your top 5, and then your top 10 things you should be doing, and I kind of put them in priority. And again, this is my opinion, and I'm here to share these with you. And if you have any thoughts or concerns, you can actually write those in the notes, and I'll try to integrate those into future videos as well. So the first 3 things: what do plants need? What should you be looking for when you're in your garden? And I actually brought this question up to my 6-year-old daughter yesterday, and I shared that question with her, and I'm like, so what are the 3 things plants need? And she started going down the list, and she's like, plants need water, and they need sunlight, and then she hesitated, and I'm like, well, think about this. If your pet, so the example we came up with and that helped her get on track was, I asked her, pretend that your plant is a pet. Imagine it's a dog or a cat or a bird or any other animal. I'm like, what are the 3 things you're going to want to do for your pet? And she said, well, first it's going to need water. I'm like, correct. You got to make sure you give your plants water. The other thing she immediately said is food. I'm like, great. You got to feed them. And I've actually got in front of me over here various fertilizers. So she said food, and she immediately said, oh, food is fertilizer. And I'm like, exactly. So we're going to talk about a couple different ways of fertilizing your plants. And I'm like, so what's the 3rd thing that plants need? Like, what are you going to want to give your dog? And she's like, a dog house. I'm like, that's it. They need shelter. And that's what we've actually done with this avocado and with this plumeria plant and with this cutting of a eureka lemon that's already fruiting as well. And what we've offered them is protection. And the protection they're getting is from a product called IVORganics 3-in-1 Tree Guard Paint. I'll share this quickly with you, and I'm going to go into more detail later. But IVORganic, it's a 3-in-1 Tree Guard Paint, and it says the natural tree trunk branch barrier, protection against damaging sunburn and insects and rodents, and it's for use on your roses and fruits and nut trees, ornamental trees and shrubs, and it's a non-toxic, environmentally safe and organic product. And this comes in 3 different colors. I've got a white, as well as a green, and a brown color, and it basically comes with a paint powder that's in there, as well as an oil vial that provides the protection against the insects and the rodents. And if you zoom in over here, you can actually see that this plumeria was actually coated with the IVORganics white, and we did that when we transplanted it from the pot into a larger size pot. And you can see from the last time we did the plumeria video, and I'll actually put the link down below, you can see it's now gone into bloom, and it's providing these very fragrant blossoms. And keep in mind, plumeria are usually more fragrant in the evenings than they are in the morning and afternoons. The other plant I have here as well is my eureka lemon. You can see the lemon over here. And this here is coated with the IVORganics green, and I'll just spin that around so you can actually see the green coat of paint that we've got against the tree trunk. Citrus are very susceptible to sunburn, so we've actually got the tree trunk that's exposed to the most light protected against sunburn. And then the last thing I've got here is my Haas avocado that we just installed just a few weeks ago, and I know there's a video link on this as well, so I'll actually include that in the comments below, so you can actually watch and follow to see how we actually prepare this. But you can see we covered it with the IVORganics white paint along the tree trunk and branches, and then we actually sprayed the entire plant, as you can actually see by zooming in on these leaves. This is actually a solution with 1 or 2 teaspoons in a spray bottle, and that basically coated, and it helps keep the plant cool, especially since we installed this in the summer months. When it comes to planting plants, the best time for planting your plants is in the spring or in the fall. But again, our timing was now, and IVORganics provide the plants with that shelter that plants can benefit from. So the first step, when you're coming out and visiting your garden, let's talk about water. And I'm actually going to turn on the watering system here so you can actually see how this plant actually gets watered. So if you come a little closer, you can actually see that this is actually being watered in this watering zone. It's basically watering the entire root zone. You can see below as well that there's some organic matter. This is some, onions that were left from behind. This is some of the leaf mold, which are from the leaves that have fallen off the plant. And then all of that is actually feeding the soil microorganisms that'll then be benefiting the plant. We're basically watering a zone around the plant to actually encourage the earthworms, the beneficial nematodes and bacteria to all thrive and to actually help support and invigorate this tree to actually grow to a great start. Let me show you another sprinkler issue. You can let it run. You're now going to go this way.
I believe.
So here we are now next to one of our Meyer lemons. This is the Meyer lemon on a standard rootstock. It's only in its second year right now, but if you zoom in a little closer, you can actually see the newly developed fruit, and then below you can actually see the fruit that was set from the spring bloom. And here we are now in the month of August. And now take a look at the sprinklers. So it's watering this zone. All of these are actually tropical milkweed. And even though milkweed is a wonderful addition to have for supporting the monarch butterfly, it's the wrong variety to be growing. And I've done a video on that, and I'll put the link down below. But all of these are weeds, and we're actually going to pull these up and leave them in this zone. So in regards to something else to be doing, it's weeding, but we'll get to that later. But the goal is to remove all of these seedlings, and there's a million of them in the backyard, and I'll explain again in that other video, and you can actually see the link down below if you want to see why I've actually just removed those. But in regards to the watering, it's only watering this part of the tree. So what I need to do ultimately is actually get the sprinkler either a little closer or a little higher and actually increase the spray zone to watering the root ball, because right now I'm only watering half of it. So what I'm doing when I'm actually here in the garden, and after usually, I finished watering, is I'll actually have to now water this side of the plant and make sure this process I actually repeat at least once every week throughout the spring, summer, and early fall, and just to make sure you're actually soaking your plants. Your citrus are actually drought tolerant plants, meaning that they need very little water. So when you're actually watering your plants, it's more important to actually do a thorough deep watering of your citrus trees, and only to do them once a week, and sometimes maybe even once every 10 days. But in the hottest summer months that we're here in August, where we're having 90s and 100-degree days, you may need to water your plants maybe twice a week. And these plants aren't in ground. It's actually partially in the ground, and it's on a raised wall with a lot of drain holes. So it's kind of a blend of in ground and being a potted plant as well with the conditions that it's in. And potted plants always need more water than in ground plants. So we're just making sure that we water the entire root zone. So step one of my top 3 things to be doing, make sure you're actually properly watering your plants. Make sure you're watering the entire root zone. So when you see your sprinklers going, sometimes the sprinkler might be watering with a lot more pressure. Sometimes the sprinkler changes in regards to its amount of pressure, and therefore it's watering a different area. Maybe it's watering too much, too little. Keep our eyes out on watering. And that's actually my first tip. Let's go on to tip number 2. Have a seat. So, tip number 2, feed your plants. So, the second thing of my top 3 things you should do for your plants, we just discussed watering. Number 2 is feeding your plants. If you have a pet in your backyard, if you've got a dog, a bird, a fish, a cat, you got to make sure you feed them every day. But unlike your pets, you don't need to feed your plants every day. When it comes to feeding your plants, it's recommended that you feed them no less than 3 times a year. And the 3 critical times for feeding your plant is in the spring, and in the summer, and in the fall. And if there's a way to balance your feedings, or to understand why those 3 months and not the the year round, and the reason is the plant's metabolism is fastest in the summer. It warms up in the spring, peaks in the summer, warms down in the fall, and actually most plants go into dormancy. Even if they're evergreen plants, they still go into a typical dormancy period during the winter, cooler months. So the only time you actually need to be feeding your plants is when the plant's metabolism is active. So again, spring, summer, and fall. But now that you know when to feed your plants, what do you feed your plants with? And I've got here a few products to help you so that when you go to your local nursery, you know what to get your hands on. And what I'm going to start off with is this product. For doing a liquid feed, I've got fish fertilizer. This says 511, and it's like, what do the numbers mean? And most people don't understand that the numbers are actually the percentage of elements, and these are your macronutrients, or your most important nutrients you got to get for your plants. Your first number is always going to be nitrogen, your second number is always going to be phosphorus, and your last number is going to be potassium. And nitrogen is very important for plant growth and for greening. The second number is more important for flowers and fruit, and the last number is more important for root development, disease resistance. So we're looking at a product that's heavily leaning towards plant growth and less towards flowering, fruiting, and disease resistance. So it's important to actually have a balanced product. A better product would be a 5-5-5 or a 3-3-3. But again, this does have its benefits, especially early in the season. And if your goal is to get some quick green growth, you can actually use a fish fertilizer, and it's typically 1 or 2 tablespoons. You can read the directions with a gallon of water, and you water your plants, and you're going to probably have to repeat that about every 2 to 4 weeks throughout the growing season. But this is one supplement that's excellent for plants. Another here is a product like this, and this is called Organic Neptune's Harvest, and it says fish and seaweed fertilizer. And take a look at the numbers here. It says 2, 3, 1. So the focus of this product is actually on fruiting and flowering. So we can actually combine this product, which actually has more phosphorus in it, with the fish fertilizer to actually create a more balanced product. So that's one idea for when making your liquid feed for your plants. Another organic way to feed your plants, and here's a product made by Espoma, and the ratios on this are 3-4-4, and that means 3% nitrogen, 4% phosphorus, and 4% potassium. And again, this is more of a balanced product. It's granular and will actually last in your soil for about 3 months, which will get you from spring to summer and from summer to fall. So a product like this, you can actually put around your plants. This here says it's designed more so for vegetables, but you can get something that's also good for your fruit trees. And the goal again is you're trying to feed your soil microorganisms. You're trying to do things organically to feed your earthworms, to feed your beneficial bacteria, to feed your nematodes, to do all of those things. And that's something that only organic fertilizers can do. Another product here, and this is designed more so for trees. Organic Plus Fruit Tree Fertilizer. If we turn around over here, I'm trying to find the percentages, but we can actually read it right here. So 4% nitrogen, 5% phosphate, 4% potash. So 4-5-4. So again, a pretty balanced fertilizer, and then it also contains bacillus, which is bacteria. It also contains mycorrhizae, which are a fungus. And imagine this: you've actually got a mushroom. If you've got a mushroom that's actually grown in your garden, the mushroom is just, just like those mushrooms that you see on your pizza, but those mushroom roots can travel hundreds, if not thousands of feet. And it creates a network that actually networks all of your plants in your garden. So to have mycorrhizae, and they are actually naturally occurring, but some of these organic products actually have them added, and I'm not too sure about how well it stores on the shelf and handles the temperature differences between, the transportation and the air conditioning and the heating, and the warm weathers, depending on where it's stored. So, but your garden already has all of these things, and by actually growing organically, you're going to be feeding the beneficial bacteria, the beneficial mycorrhiza, the beneficial fungus, which is the same thing, the beneficial earthworms. You're basically going to be feeding the life in your garden to ultimately feed and support your plants. So consider growing things organically. Another product, a couple more I want to show you that are organic. Here's a Job's product, and again, this says for bountiful vegetables, and these are spikes. You can actually just stick a few spikes around your plants. And take a look at the ratios on this one, a 2-7-4. So just a little bit of growth with the nitrogen, 7% phosphorus. So a lot of percentage going towards the flowering and the fruiting, 4% phosphorus for disease resistance and strong root development. So really designed towards giving, as it says over here, for bountiful vegetables, as it's got a lot of energy that's going towards the fruit development and less towards the plant growth. And then the last thing I got, and this is kind of a hidden secret, and I did a video on this as well, and I'll put the link down below so you can actually see all the details about the benefits of Epsom salt. But the key thing here is Epsom salts are made out of magnesium and sulfur. This is not table salt, not sodium chloride. This is magnesium sulfate. And what it does is actually provides your plant with 2 extra micronutrients, or less important nutrients, but still very important for, as it says over here, vigorous lawns and flowers and plants and vegetables and trees. And the directions on here, and read your own labels, but you can generally walk around your garden and add 1 or 2 tablespoons to a gallon of water and water your trees and water your vegetables and basically have a much healthier garden by making sure you got those micronutrients in your garden as well. So we just talked about organic fertilizers. Now, when you see a product like this, and even though all of these name brands usually have their organic versions as well, but take a look at the difference between a chemical fertilizer. Try not to touch this, I'll scoop it out so you can see it. Let me get that in the light for you so you can see, but it's shiny blue, chemically driven. It has, let's take a look at the percentages here. A 24, let me double check that, that's such a high number. But that's it. So it's a 24,816. An incredibly high number, but again, these high numbers can only be achieved chemically. So 24% nitrogen, 8% phosphorus, and 16% potassium. By using a product such as this on your plants, you're telling the plant to actually use chemical to replace the nitrogen that's going into the DNA of the plant, to use the chemical phosphorus that's ultimately going to end up in your fruits and your flowers that your family is going to consume, and to use the phosphorus that's again chemically driven to go into the root health and support. But pretty much all the parts don't just uniformly go into one place. They're all necessary. These are just the micronutrients, and then you also need the micronutrients as well. But aside from the fact that you've got chemically driven elements that are going to go into the foods and the leaves and the root structures and the stems of the plant, you're also not feeding your soil microorganisms. So you're not completing a healthy symbiotic relationship between your fertilizers and the living organisms in your soil that will ultimately provide you with the healthiest and strongest plants in your garden. So here's one product that is a chemical fertilizer. Another thing that chemical fertilizers, another thing that your organic fertilizers offer is that it actually warms the soil. By actually putting organic let's just wait 2 seconds, hopefully it's going to pass. It feels like it's circling. Let's go. So another benefit of actually using your organic fertilizers, all of these over here, is that it actually also warms the soil. You're actually breathing life into the soil. It's increasing the amount of microbial activity. There's a lot more action basically happening in your soil, and all of that life is actually gonna warm the plants and warm the soil and actually help further increase the metabolism of the plant. That's something, again, a chemical fertilizer cannot do for your plants. This here is another chemical fertilizer as well, called Osmocote. And if we take a look on the back again, this says it's a 15-9-2, so 15% nitrogen, 9% phosphorus, 12% potassium. So, and it's also got all of these micronutrients, which is fantastic. But again, a chemically derived fertilizer. And the last over here is a product made by Bandini. And the cool thing about this is I love the fact that it's a balanced fertilizer, but again, this is chemical. If you actually put this on your fruits and vegetables, you're eating the nitrogen that's coming from a chemical factory rather than actually getting your nutrients that are ultimately supporting your fruit health and your family's health from an organic source. Yalla. So then we also started off the video. So we talked about water, we talked about food, and now we're going to talk about shelter. We started off the video talking about IVOrganic's 3-in-1 tree guard paint and the benefits it offers your plants. And what I have here again is I've got my plumeria over here. I also want to share this cutting, which actually came from the video we did on that plumeria plant about a month ago. I'm going to put that link there as well. But you can see we coated it with the IVOrganic's 3-in-1 tree guard paint. But what we're going to do here next is I'm going to show you the benefits of actually IVOrganic's 3-in-1 tree guard paint on your prunings as well. If you actually go to prune your plant, you're actually exposing the plant to more sunlight getting into the lower branches and lower trunks. And as well as that pruned surface is also now an entryway for insects such as termites and beetles to actually enter the heart of the wood or the center part of the plant. Come and let me show you a few examples. You're gonna have to get on this side. So we're over here next to my Oro Blanco grapefruit. You can see that it's actually quite productive over here. But if you zoom in a little closer, you'll see that on this branch that we pruned, and it actually died, so we actually cut it down, we actually coated it with the IVOrganics, and this now creates a seal to prevent any wood-boring insects from getting into the heart of the wood until the plant actually heals and seals over. Let me show you one other plant as well.
I'm bored.
Try not to put that in the video.
What?
Your comments.
Yeah, but you're not gonna... You have to cut.
There'll be 1,000 people watching this tomorrow.
Yeah, but you have to cut and paste.
Here we are now again. This here's my bear's lime. If you actually zoom in over here, you can actually see the first fruit. We just installed this about 6 months ago, and we're expecting a lot more in regards to fruit production on this plant by next year. But in the meantime, we want to take care of this plant. We want to make sure that it grows and gets established and gets as bushy and as compact as possible to support the most amount of fruit. And what I want to show you in here, and this is not a prune that I did, but when I actually purchased it from the nursery, if you zoom in over here, you can actually see a branch that was actually it seems like it was ripped out of the plant, and that's actually another opening that we're actually going to close here right now. So I've got my IVOrganic's 3-in-1 tree guard paint. We've already added water before the video. I'm just going to stir it to make sure all the oils get into the contents, and then we're just going to take our brush here and we're just going to fill that in like so. And that's it. And now it's sealed. If you take a look, we actually painted this tree about 4 or 5 months ago. And being that it's organic, it does break down, but it's still offering, you know, the lightness that's actually protecting the plant from sunburn. If you look all the way down, and we coated all the way down to the base of the plant. And take a look at the difference between like this branch over here that's coated and this branch over here that's actually a new branch that's grown since. One other thing I can share with you is on the hottest days we actually even coated the leaves as well, and you can take a look at that as well. And then since then it's developed all this new growth as well over here and over here. So the importance of covering your pruned branches is very important. There's actually a split in regards to research in regards to the importance of actually painting your trees. But this isn't painting your trees. Paint actually has a lot of preservatives in it that actually has, you know, ingredients that actually have algicides in it and fungicides in it and all of these preservatives to allow the paint to serve, you know, to last for decades after decades. This product is an organic product. It's an organic paint powder with an organic oils. It's a member here of a member, it says over here on the label, of the Organic Trade Association as well. And I'm now gonna treat you guys and take you to the Los Angeles Zoo, which is right around the corner from us, so you can actually see some more trees that have actually been pruned, and the beetles and the termites have worked their way in, and these plants are actually gonna definitely have their lives compromised because they haven't been taken care of immediately after the prune. And I'm going to show you the importance of actually protecting and coating your plants following any pruning. And I'll show you some sunburn, I'll show you some insect damage, and I'm going to show you some other issues. So follow me. We're going to the Los Angeles Zoo. So here we are now at the Los Angeles Zoo, and we're going to be now demonstrating some trees here that are suffering and can actually benefit from the IVOrganics 3-in-1 tree guard paint. We're under the shade of an oak tree, and you can see here that they just made a prune that happened within the last year. And take a look at this other cut over here. And so far the tree's actually healed well. You can actually see on the outer part, that's the bark, and then right under the bark layer is the cambium tissues that would lie right under the bark, and the rest of this is the supporting wood structure. But so far this tree's healthy, but I'm going to show you what's going to happen over the next few years if this is not actually coated with a product such as this IVOrganics 3-in-1 tree guard paint. When it ultimately closes, it'll actually end up as something like this. This here is actually a wound that is since closed, and here's another one as well that was also a pruned branch that is since closed. But I'm going to show you what's going to happen now over the next 5, 10, and 15, and 20 years as we go through and view some other trees here at the zoo. Under the shade of what appears to be a crepe myrtle tree, you can see those beautiful pink flowers up above. The plant seems to be in good health, but take a look more closely on what's going on. Before you get any closer, you'll notice that the shadow of the tree is over here. So the sun has been shining on this side of the tree for its entire life. And if you zoom in a little closer, you'll actually see that the entire tree is actually burnt from about 10 to 15 feet high all the way down to the base of the tree. And if you take a look at all those cracks. And the only living wood that's actually supporting this tree is actually on the back side. And if you come around the other way now, you'll actually see that this is actually the bark, and right under the bark is the cambium tissues that are supporting the waters and the sugars that are then flowing and supporting all of those flowers and leaves and branches up above. But without this cambium tissue, this tree would otherwise be dead. To actually preserve this plant and give it the longest life, what we'd need to do if you come around again is take a product such as this IVOrganics. This actually is a color brown, so it comes in the green and white colors as well, but we'd basically coat this in the IVOrganics product to basically keep the insects and the bacteria and wood-boring insects such as beetles and termites from getting into this wood and shortening the life of this plant any further. There's one other tree I'd like to share with you as well. Follow me. So here we are now under the shade of a mulberry tree. If you take a look, it's a beautiful looking tree, provides a nice canopy, very vigorous and fast growing tree. But when you actually go to prune the branch, this was actually pruned at least 5, possibly 10 years ago. But when they pruned it, you can see this is the cambium tissues, and it's actually starting to heal. But as it's healed, because it wasn't protected, you can actually see that the wood-boring insects, whether they're termites or beetles, have actually worked their way into the tree and are actually starting to consume the center of the wood. So even after this actually seals and closes, there's actually still going to be insects that are trapped within the heart of this tree and continue to take away from the life and the age of this tree. So again, when it comes to pruning your trees, and if you've got exposed wood such as this, it's important to actually cover that with the IVOrganics paint. I would actually go in and actually spray it and saturate it before putting a paint seal over it. I hope you found this part of it informative. And now let's continue the next step. Here we are in conclusion at the Los Angeles Zoo. We just talked about the 3 things most important for plants. We talked about water, food, and shelter using IVOrganics 3-in-1 tree guard paint. That covers our steps 1 through 3, and now we're going to continue on to steps 7 through 10. Come and follow me and take a look at this dinosaur here behind me. But let's get going. So the next step, this is now step number 4. It's called harvesting. And it doesn't just apply to your fruits and your vegetables, but also your flowers. So here we are next to a zucchini plant. And if you come and zoom in over here, I just harvested this yesterday and I wanted, for the purpose of the video, to show one more. So this could wait like one more day, but we have no problem eating them this young. They actually taste even better. So we actually are harvesting our zucchinis. Make sure you visit your garden frequently, if not every day, at least every other day, to make sure you actually remove the fruits so that your plants can actually produce the next generation. If you zoom in over here, this here is another female flower that'll actually develop the next zucchini, and then the next zucchini, and there's another one back here with the flower, and then this here is a male flower. This has no zucchini attached to it. So this here is the male flower. So we've actually been harvesting on average about 3 to 4 of these per plant, and we have 6 plants here in the garden. So we've been having a surplus of zucchinis, feeding our neighbors and feeding our friends and family all the way from LA down to Orange County. Let me show you some more things that we can harvest today.
How about the other one, Charles? You don't want to grab it?
The best image is going to be over here, and the goal is to capture the roof.
I like this.
So now here we are in what has developed into our tomato cave, as my daughter and I like to call it. And this variety over here is called the early girl, and I've got now tomatoes, which was the goal at the beginning of the season, that we can now pick from over our head. So again, once they turn ripe and ready to eat, be sure to pick them. Be sure to pick them so that the rest of the green tomatoes and all the plant's energy and resources and minerals and vitamins can all work their way towards the undeveloped fruit. This is highly important, and the energy of the plant is known as so come and check out the rest of the fruit here that we're gonna be picking. Here's some more. This here is a Roma variety. And another. And another. This here is a San Marzano tomato. And let's go through a little bit more. I think I saw a couple more tomatoes in here that we can eat. Stay there. Okay, come around this way. The other way. Other way.
There's more over here, Charles. In that one.
Where?
In that.
Be careful eating these. They feel nasty.
Then dump them from now. I wouldn't even bring them in. Trash them. Oh.
So part of harvesting is also deadheading, removing any seeds, unless there's the goal to actually collect the seeds to create the next generation of basil. I usually like starting my basil from little starter plants that I'll pick up at the nursery. They usually come with 3 to 4 in a container that I'll split. And all the basil I've got here in my garden just came from one plant, just because they usually put several seeds in one little container. But it's important to actually remove the seeds so that, again, the plant's energy, also known as ADP and ATP, adenosine triphosphate, to be specific, but the plant actually goes through the process of actually making energy, just like our bodies do. And you want to make sure that all of the plant's energies are going towards our goal, which is making more leaves so that we can actually make more, salads and a variety of things that my wife actually makes using the basil. So we'll actually remove any seeds that are going to be forming. Here's another set of flowers that are actually going to be developing. So we're just removing that, and then we'll pick what we want to eat. And when you actually prune this, I'll give you a pruning technique. You basically want to go down to the next node and cut like so, about 1/4 inch above the node, and that'll encourage the plant's energy to basically stop right at the node and then feed the next 2 branches that are growing out. Let me actually show you one more thing. So take a look at today's harvest. Let's take a look at one more thing. I want to show you my roses. You might run if you hurry. Hold on. So another part of harvesting is also making sure you're deadheading your roses as well. You want to make sure that the energy is going towards more bloom so we can enjoy this color as long as possible. Here we are now going into August, and there's still plenty of small blooms, medium blooms, and then these blooms that are close to being spent. And if you take a look over here, this one here is all falling apart. And if we leave it, I'm just going to remove those petals, you can actually see just underneath this petal that that's the rose's ovary, and that's actually where the seeds are going to be developed. But we don't want the plant to put all of its energy and resources into seeding, so we'll actually remove that. We're going to go down to a couple of leaves below, and we'll just cut it like so. And the result will be, there'll be a little sprout that'll come out between the leaf and the stem, and that'll actually form the next roses. And let me show you another example of how that would look. If you take a look over here, this was another rose that was actually pruned, and then here comes the next leaf that's coming in between the leaf and the stem. Come and follow me. So, step number 5, pruning. Always keep your eye out on your plants, and you're basically controlling pruning not just for your fall pruning and getting plants ready for the spring. Pruning is something you can do throughout the entire year. The plants are growing in the wrong direction. If you're trying to control the shape of the plant, and as we've done in our tomato videos, we're growing our tomatoes as 1, 2, 3, sometimes no more than 4 stems. So all the additional stems that are created, that's all pruning. We're trying to control the shape and the size and trying to manage its growth. Let me show you one example over here. Follow me. So here we are next to our Fuerte avocado. This is a type B avocado tree, and if you want to learn more about avocados, I'll put a link down below as well, where you can learn all about the different kinds of avocados. And just to let you know, you only need 1 avocado in your garden to actually produce fruit. The reason for actually planting more than 1, and if you're going to plant more than 1, make sure one is of a type A and the other is a type B, and that'll actually increase fruit production by generally 5 to as much as 20%. So the thing I want to share with you now in regards to pruning is this tree is growing so tall, and it's called apical dominance, being the top of the plant is dominating and taking the energy away from the rest of the plant. And our goal is to actually have a plant that's compact, that'll grow within the 6, 8, maybe 10 foot width. And then we want to control the height to be about 15 feet. So the height is okay, but it's taking over and taking energy away from these lower branches that we want to support fruit. So what we're going to do is quite simple. We just simply remove the top of the plant. And you can see I'm actually selecting, you can see the top has actually got all these branches that are branching out. And our goal is to basically come down to the next point where these branches are. And these will actually be the main branches that'll support the upper part of the tree and the upper fruits that'll be there. So we're just going to remove the top, and again I go up to the next branch that we're going to want to support, and I'm cutting it at an angle with about a 1/4 inch space. So we're just going to cut that like so. And now as the plant's energy runs up the plant, it's going to be encouraging these branches as well as these lower branches. We're going to have a more compact form tree rather than just having some giant trying to reach its maximum height. So pruning, we just did an example. Something else I want to share with you as well is also involves training. Like, we want to make sure that the plant's growing in the right direction. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to support this and pull it back. But before I do so, let me show you what's happened down below. So right here, we actually did this tie, and we always tie our knot to the stake and then we wrap it around the tree. But apparently we didn't leave enough room between the stake and the tree, and now the tree's being strangled to death actually right here. And what's happening is this string is actually on so tight, it's preventing the flow of sugars and water up and down this zone over here. I'll actually get this branch out of the way so you can better see. So you can see that it's actually being constricted. I can run my finger over it and it's actually got an indentation from that string. So what we're going to do is we got to actually relieve that pressure. So I'm going to carefully remove that tie behind and try to pull that string out. And you can see what it's done to the tree. The tree will recover from this, but it's another important reason to be coming out to your garden and visiting your plants, because this tree was otherwise being strangled. And if we wait until the fall to actually, consider pruning or taking a look at your plants, it could have been too late, and we could have ended up with a lot less of a healthy plant than we actually have here today. So the next thing we want to do is actually now train it. We want it to actually grow in the direction we want it. We want the center of the tree to be as close as possible over the root trunk. So we're gonna support that now by doing so. We're gonna take our string and tie that like so. And again, we always put the knot on the stake and not against the tree. And then we're gonna tie this now loosely, and we're going to be a little more careful this time. And we tie the knot. And if you take a look now in between, there's about 1 to 2 inches of space between the tree and the stake. This will allow the tree to now expand and grow without getting constricted as we saw down below. It actually happened in one more spot, and let me show you over here as well. So if we take a look again at the my bear's lime, also known as the Persian lime, if you come and zoom in a little bit lower, the same issue actually happened to this tree as well. And take a look at that knot. So we wrapped it around here. Once upon a time, this tree was no thicker than this. So there could have been a time that it was actually thin and had enough room for growth, but it's since expanded enough, and this one's being really strangled pretty badly. So we're going to remove the knot and pull that out. And take a look at that indentation that's happening here. But again, it will recover. It's better that we caught it now than later. But again, I've been to many gardens, and a lot of homeowners actually leave those knots in there, and the plant eventually ends up growing with those ties inside the plant, and it can never be pulled out. So at least we're able to get it out, and it's going to get to continue to expand and grow and get all of those sugars and waters up and down the plant. Let's take a look at another example. Go all the way. I'm actually gonna have you go down below. All the way down there. So here we are now. I've got my Eureka lemon tree that's behind me, but my Thompson seedless green grapevine is actually growing into the tree. This is not the only vine, there's several vines. So again, when it comes to pruning, I'm trying to keep this plant controlled into that part of my garden. So we're going to come through here and basically remove these vines. We actually end up using these leaves to actually make grape leaf rolls. I don't make them, but I'm going to pass this off to another family that'll actually end up wrapping these leaves and turning this into food as well. And here's one more branch as well. It's gone right into the lemon tree. And there we go. So now we've got all of these vines from actually growing in, and actually it's, you know, doing pretty much like a parasite. It's actually inhibiting and shading the lemon more than what the lemon is wanting. The lemon should be in full sun. There should be no competition between itself and the surrounding plant. So we've actually moved the grapevine over to its growing zone. So here's pruning, and here we are now, you know, going into August, and we're pruning away. Here's another branch again that's growing in a direction we don't want it, and we simply cut that. So, and here's another branch, and we'll cut that, and we'll cut that. And you can see we've actually now changed the shape of this grapevine. It's now in a manageable area, and it actually is far more appealing to the garden. Let's take a look at one last example.
I can't believe I grew in
What's
this
that?
tree.
You saw it, right?
Yeah, that's
the video got it too?
Yeah, that's freaking insane.
There should be one more tip in here. Oh, this. And then I'm done.
Do I come in there?
Yeah, follow me.
And haram, those trees, what happened to them?
What tree? Yeah, that was sad. I was strangling
Yeah.
them. I was waiting for this video to do that.
You killed them.
So the last thing I want to share with you, I'm actually now here next to my 3-in-1 apple tree. It's an apple tree that we've grafted with a red variety, our Granny Smith variety, and then this here is a family favorite that we've been growing for almost 20, if not 30 years. So I don't know the name of this one, but if you take a look here, it's made its first apple, and it's usually half red and half green, and it's a sweet and tart apple variety. And the goal is, once we actually harvest this fruit, you can actually see that this branch is twisted horribly. So as soon as the fruit comes off, we're actually going to remove the branch or prune it in half to encourage a little bit more growth. And we did the same over here. This branch was actually pruned right over here, if you take a look. What I didn't do is put a little bit of IVORganics right here on the tip, which I'm going to do right now. So again, we're going to take our can, we're going to stir its contents to make sure that the oils and the paints are together, and then we're just going to put the smallest amount of this right here on the tip. And that again is going to keep any termites, any beetles, or any insects or parasites from actually entering the tree. The next point is we want to actually, prune it to basically encourage the most amount of bushy growth. And this here we just pruned, so I'm not going to mess with this side. But if there's a part of the plant, for example, this branch over here that's growing in the same zone as this plant, I may decide to actually remove it, which in fact I'm going to. So I'm coming down here, and I'm actually going to prune that. So what I'm doing is I'm actually selecting, and I'm wanting to you know, see where it's going to end up growing. Again, this here is another branch. It's grown in the wrong direction. This zone here is for the red. This zone is over here is for the red and the green variety, that blend over here, the apple we just saw. And then this, I got to be careful that it doesn't grow into its zone. So we can actually prune this branch out as well. And I'm actually just going to shorten it like so. And I'll do the same with this. And here, here. And here's our passion fruit vine. I'm trying to keep it up on our trellis the best I can. And this plant's actually grown about 15 to 20 feet in just the last 8 to 10 weeks. So it's got a little more ways to go before it covers the entire trellis. So the next 2 months, it'll cover an entire 30-foot trellis. And then we'll just remove this branch as well. And what we've created now is a more compact apple tree. All of these nodes now, if you come and zoom in a little more closely, you'll notice that at every leaf, I cut about a 1/4 inch above it. So at each node, it'll actually now branch. And the goal is I'm gonna have a more compact apple, which will maximize the amount of flowers and the maximum amount of fruits going into the future. And now these branches will actually be a little bit more sturdy, so it can also hold on to its apples and not lose them in the first winds. That actually concludes our step number 5. And now let's get started with step number 6. Pest control. Okay, let's go this way.
Actually.
Do you want a chair?
No.
Okay. You're gonna have to go on that side because of the lighting.
What the hell is that?
What's what? Oh, don't worry about it.
What?
Sorry. If I had something, I would smack the shit out of it.
What is that?
It's the beetle.
Yeah.
It's in Ola's house.
No, it's not.
It went to Ola's house.
For sure?
Yeah.
Because I'll be screaming.
I'll be editing.
No.
Okay. I don't want this in the video.
What is that?
It's your Swiss chard.
What the hell is using? Yani, you're planting stuff that we don't even use.
You ate it.
Swiss chard?
You don't eat Swiss chard? You know
What
how
is-
much lettuce you got off of this?
Oh,
You
the
said
lettuce.
keep taking more and more.
The lettuce. Wow, look how big. Well, why is it growing like that?
That's
What's
what
the
it-
other thing behind it?
This is your beets.
Do we have any beets that's ready?
Nope, but they're coming and I'm going to show you in the picture. It's crazy. It's crazy amount of food you can make in this teeny garden.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
I'm so burned out.
Don't be.
Can I eat that apple or it's not ready?
It's about a week away. It's going to be too sour right now.
It's gonna be for me.
It's sour. We're all going to share it.
I don't think so. the hell is that?
Kids, go.
Yeah, you're on.
You never stopped it?
No.
So now we're going to be discussing step number 6, and that is pest control. What I've got here are a couple of chemical alternatives. These are actually harsh chemicals for using in your garden. This one here is made by 7, which is actually less harmful than a product like this made by Spectracide. And these are chemically driven, synthetic, manufacturer made chemicals for actually killing. It says over here 65 insects, and it's got pictures here of beetles and worms and ants and ticks. And this picture here shows a picture of a grub and cinch bugs and ants and fleas and ticks as well. And the thing it's not sharing with you is that these products also kill the beneficial insects. It's going to kill the spiders, it's going to kill the praying mantis, it's going to kill those ladybugs, it's going to kill all the things that actually prey upon what we consider a pest. And what I've been educating people is that a healthy garden actually has a balance of both the predators and the prey, the beneficial insects and those that we consider harmful to our plants. And the goal is to get the right balance, and if you need to control them with a method, I've got products such as this, and I'm just going to quickly just go over them, and I'm not going to go into detail. I've got other videos that talks about this. But here's the Captain Jack's, which is a spinosad based product. It uses a bacteria for killing insects. And this here is a safer and less harsh, less harmful to your organic garden. Another product is using a product such as neem oil. Another one is using a mineral oil product. This here is made by Bonide. And then if you've got any snails and slugs in your garden, which I love having, you can actually use a product like this for killing them. And here's another one. This here is a spinosad based product that kills snails and slugs. And this one here uses, it looks like the active ingredient in this is called iron phosphate. So these are organic ways, and these are your chemical ways for actually controlling insects. The reason I said I love my snails and I love my slugs is you can notice to my left I've got my compost pile. I've learned this technique from some South American farmer where in between their grove and every time they go to prune their trees, they actually put a pile that is spaced among the trees, and every tree is next to a pile such as this. And you'll notice on top that this here is an onion, which I don't know why there's a full onion. We can actually still consume this, but it somehow ended up on the top of the pile. This here is the top of the avocado, the fuerte avocado that we just set on top. Here are some shoots of tomatoes that we actually removed that were, again, we're growing them as single, double, triple, and some are even a 4-stem tomato, but these are extra stems. Here's some branches from our avocado. But as we get lower, here's some branches from our lemon verbena, which is like used for making lemon tea. Here's some parts of our zucchini plant. And then you can see it's starting to get brown. So I'm not going to dig any deeper into here, because as I get deeper I'm going to now run into the snails and the slugs and the roly-polies and a whole bunch of insects, and probably as well a few lizards as well that are benefiting from all the insects and all the life that are in here. But when I go to actually water, and we're talking about now all of these insects consuming this organic matter, when I go to water this pile, all of their waste is actually now going through the pile and enriching the soil beneath it, which is ultimately benefiting behind me the lime tree, and in front of me my avocado tree, and to this side my tomato plants. So simply doing this, it's an easy way to actually get organic matter in your soil without actually going through the troubles of making a compost pile in your garden. This is a nice, safe, healthy way to actually do it. I wouldn't recommend putting kitchen scraps, as it's going to attract a lot more wild animals, and we've got a lot of wild animals up here in the Hollywood Hills. So we've just left this all as green matter. All of the vitamins, all of the minerals that the plants have taken up and have went to go and benefiting this plant is now going right back from this plant back into the soil to now benefit its neighboring plant. One other thing I want to share with you, and take a look. The reason for using chemicals to control pests in your garden, and this here is one example. If you come a little closer, you'll notice that these are the heads and the seed pods of the onions that were once residing in this area. But these seeds have actually already fallen off. I tried drying them out so I can use them for the spring, But if you zoom in a little closer, you can actually see they've already started to sprout. These are like my little baby seedling onions. And if you take a look a little further back, right in here, these are my little beets. This is like my first beet, but there's like a million more that are sprouting underneath all of this leaf mold that's going on. So if I were to use a product to actually kill, and actually let me show you what's going on over here. I just picked this up, but if you zoom in a little closer over here, you can see how many insects are actually in here. Take a look at the roly-polies. There's all of these little white bugs in there. I just found a little baby worm right there. I don't know how much your video can capture, but you can see there's at least 100, if not 1,000 insects in this little square inch. So treating and trying to kill these to hopefully benefit the seedlings is actually going to change the dynamics and the biology in your backyard. So be very careful, even when using organic chemicals. And if you're going to use a chemical, use an organic chemical. But even your organic chemicals will harm these living insects in your garden. So we're going to basically wait for these seedlings to germinate, and then I'm going to transplant them to other parts of the garden. My goal is to always get, hopefully, you know, between a 70 and 90% success rate. Sure, I lose some tomatoes to some pests. Sure, I lose some of my seedlings to some of these little critters. But these other remedies are only used if I can't get what I want out of the garden. And especially at this stage, I understand the importance of maybe trying to protect a zone, but don't use these products blindly and cover the entire garden when I'm just trying to protect, you know, a couple square feet of seedlings that are trying to germinate in this part of the garden. And take a look where the beets actually came from. Take a look at the beet plants. These are from last year. See that they're giant beets, and they went into bolt in the summer, and now they've created all of these seeds, which will actually produce the beets that our family will be enjoying going into the next year. Let me show you one other thing. Let's get it through.
You've been talking over an hour, just so you know.
I think once I cut it, it won't be.
Okay, but I've been standing here for an hour, that's my point.
So to continue in regards to pest control, take a look here. Take a look at these leaves. It's covered in this white mold, and it's actually harming the plant. As you can see, the entire green color is gone. The mold is actually taken over the entire leaf, and it's flaking off and contaminating other parts of the plant. If you zoom in over here as well, you can see again the white mold, and then there's some insects that are actually drilling holes, you know, throughout these leaves as well. And it's affecting some of the older leaves a little bit more than the newer leaves that are here towards the beginning. As you can see, the new leaf is fine. It's flowering and fruiting, and the health in the front is fine. But behind it, it's actually getting eaten and plagued with disease and insects. So what do we do? And the decision is yours. In my garden, I'm deciding to do nothing. I've actually grown these zucchinis since early spring, and we've benefited, as I said earlier, harvesting anywhere from, per plant, anywhere from 2 to 4 zucchinis per week. And we're now in August, and by September, October at the latest, these plants will be spent. Production will actually will decline significantly. They will not make it through the end of the year. And we got to make a decision at what point we're actually done with these plants, and then we'll uproot them and recycle them into the compost bin. If there's too much disease, if we can't remove the disease, be sure not to recycle the diseased parts of the plants, but if you actually see good parts to compost, you can compost those, and then the cycle will continue. But again, I've made the decision, despite all of this disease you can see, with both insects consuming it and with mold plaguing the leaves, we've decided to actually leave this plant alone. The harvest is good, the fruit quality is great, and we don't want to actually mess with the biology here. It's only if it was more extreme than what we see going on here would I consider using an organic pesticide to control what's going on here. And that basically concludes our step number 5. And now let's go to step number 6. Follow me.
That was number 6.
Stop it. Please tell me that. So that concludes our step number 6. And now let's go on to step number 7. Are you still running it?
Yeah. But my battery is gonna die soon anyway.
6, 7, sustainable.
What?
Nothing. Okay. Let's go. Ready? So step number 7 is actually recycling your garden waste. Part of composting. The goal is to get all of the benefits that have gone into, for example, my ice cream banana plant that's behind me, and taking those nutrients, and after the leaves have been spent or branches have been pruned or there's any other waste that's within your garden, is to recycle them back into your soil. You've spent so much money on your organic fertilizers, in your compost and your amends, and the goal is to return those back into the garden without having to go invest back in your local nursery. But what we're going to do here is I'm going to basically remove what we're going to remove is, any waste that we actually have in our garden. This here is a leaf that came out of the garden, and we talked about our compost pile. And here's actually one way of actually doing your compost, and we'll just actually cut those and recycle them there. Other things that we cut here is, here's our lemon verbena. We've been enjoying lemon tea throughout the spring, summer, and now going into fall. But if there's any branches that are growing in your way, we'll actually just prune those out of the way. And again, the goal is to recycle this back into your garden. Aside from actually doing your compost piles as such, if this doesn't look appealing to you as a gardener, something else you can do is actually have a compost bin. And let me show you what mine looks like. Follow me. I'm gonna get some water. So what we have here in our garden is our compost bin. We've actually drilled about 1,000 holes going all the way around it and at the bottom as well. And we've got this lid to basically keep any critters such as rats and possums and raccoons that we have living in this area out of this. But you can see what we've actually got in here. Come and zoom in if you don't mind. You can take a look right in this area over here. We've actually got some mold that's actually growing. We talked about the importance of having mycorrhiza in your garden, and we actually already have the mold naturally growing here in our compost. And these are some zucchinis that were too hard to actually use. And we've got over here, take a look at this. Look at this growth in here. This is actually coming off of the zucchini as well. It looks like it's actually rooting right off of the stem based on the humidity as well. But there's a lot of worms in here, a lot of bacteria, a lot of nematodes, but we can just take these leaves, throw them inside the pile. What I like to do every time I'm here is actually try to aerate it. So we're going to try to come in and add some oxygen, towards the bottom. I'll spin that around and try to get some of the bottom matter on top of the top. And the next step is to always add a little water. I'd say at least once and no more than twice a week. We just basically want to water and basically keep those organisms that are in there that are breaking this down alive. Without water, these organisms cannot thrive. And we'll just close that as well. And that basically concludes step number 7. Follow me. Step number 8, right? Mm-hmm. So step number 8 is weeding. We've just covered 1 through 7 in regards to things you can be doing in your garden. The 8th one is weeding. And I guess I purposely put it towards the end because who enjoys this step? So step 8 is weeding, and I purposely left this towards the end because nobody enjoys doing it, but it is a necessary step to having a healthy garden. You've invested so much in your organic products that are feeding your plants. You're investing in water, and you want to make sure all of your time, energy, and effort is not going towards the weed and instead going towards your desired plants to have in your garden. So what I have here around me and I want to share are some specific to California native plants, and I'll tell you the importance in just a minute. But over here is salvia, also known as the Allen Chickering variety of blue sage. And then over here is my California romero, also known as the woolly blue curls, and it's usually covered in beautiful blue flowers. My yellow rock rose, my Asclepias aerocarpa milkweed, and this is a California native variety of milkweed. And then over here is my buckwheat, and you can take a look over here at these beautiful pink flowers that they produce, and these are actually going into seed, and we're actually going to be harvesting the seeds and creating more milkweed plants throughout our garden. And in the very back we have here called Bowman's California fuchsia, and this here is a little red flower, and these are actually desired by hummingbirds as well as other pollinators in the garden. And the goal for planting California native species within your garden, and I'll show you a video, it's actually one of my gardening methods, is to basically grow your fruits and your vegetables, but also being sure to actually include California native if you're in California, or if you live in Beijing, China, to find some Beijing, China specific native plants that actually are specific to there. And the goal is that these plants, once they go into bloom, are going to attract the pollinators that actually live and have been here for millions of years, well before us. And the goal is that these pollinators, whether they're bees or butterflies or whatever they are, will actually come and then benefit. Around me I've got my lemons, behind you I've got my orange tree, I've got my fig trees, I've got my banana trees, but I want to get the best pollinators out here, and the way I'm going to do that is by planting my native plant species that'll be attracting the native insects, and I'm going to have a wonderful symbiotic relationship here in my garden. And I'll put the video link to that, and I call it the Malki gardening method, or the MGM5, being the 5 steps to having a wonderful garden. And that video link will be down below as well in the notes. So what I'm actually looking at over here, you might notice that there's a carpet of green over here, and all of this green is actually from the same genus, Asclepias, but it's the Curasavacia variety, or the tropical milkweed. And this plant, unlike the native species that goes dormant in the winter, this plant actually stays green year-round, and it's actually native to Mexico and other tropical regions of the world. So because it's not native, a lot of researchers have actually said that this tropical milkweed plant actually does more harm to the monarch butterfly than good. So if you actually have tropical milkweed in your garden, be sure to remove the seed pods and be sure that it doesn't propagate and continue generation after generation. And the best thing you can do is plant your native milkweed varieties. Do not be planting the tropical variety. So one of our projects today, or in the upcoming days, is going to be to remove all of these seedlings. So we're going to have to pull all of these out. We can actually recycle this back into the compost bin, as they're not in seeding form, but we can actually take these and actually recycle all of the nutrients and minerals that are now in these seedlings and put them back in the compost pile and recycle those back into the garden. So we're going to have to weed all of these, and let me show you some other concerns here in the garden as well. So this here is another typical weed. I didn't research the name of this before doing the video. I'll try to pull it out here. And I don't know how well you can zoom in, but this here is the plant. And the concern with this plant are these seeds over here. Similar to a dandelion, the seeds are attached to these parachutes, and I'm gonna let it go, and I'm gonna pay for this next year because I'm now gonna have to be weeding this many more seeds. But they basically scatter all around the garden. These parachutes catch the wind and can spread all over your garden. So the goal is to actually make sure that you're actually weeding periodically and make sure that you get there before they actually go into seed. Luckily, I'm able to capture the majority of these, but one little head over here has probably between 500 to 1,000 seeds. And you can see times another 20 or 30, we can have end up with millions of seeds in our garden that's going to be dispersed. So we're actually going to dispose of this, and this will not be recycled into your compost bin. And here's another one as well. And you can take a look at those white ends again. And these are the seeds of this particular weed that we do not want in the garden. However, you're going to notice around me that I've got other plants that look like weeds as well. And these are actually beautiful flowers, and they're a native variety. So I've actually decided to leave these. These will naturally fall off and reseed themselves, and they've been doing so over the last few years. So these are something that we want to continue in the garden, as this plant over here as well. This year, again, is covered in seed pods of these beautiful flowers that we've been growing year after year, and we're going to allow this to actually scatter and disperse itself throughout the garden. And then over here is actually a raspberry weed. I've been actually battling this plant over the last few years, so this is something I'm going to have to get a lot deeper and try to find where its roots are running, and it usually runs anywhere from 1 to 2, possibly 3 feet below, and I've got to uproot as much of that as I can. I've got to get the right tools to make sure I do that as well. So this step is weeding, and that concludes step number 8. Let's continue now to step 9. This is easy. You can get on the other side of me. So step number 9 is mulching. We just dealt with weeding, but if you don't like weeding, you do mulching. And this here we actually got from a local source where they're shredding and basically grinding down some dead trees in the area. And I was able to get all of these wood chips for free. And if you take a look very closely, you can actually see that this actually came from a pine source. I can actually still see the pine needles that are in this, but it's mostly wood chips, as you can see here. And I want to see if there's anything unique that we can see at the bottom of this. And here I actually just found a roly-poly that's thriving down there. That demonstration didn't work. So the goal of mulching is to actually add a good thick layer. Anywhere from about 2 inches should be the minimum to as much as 4 inches. But be careful when mulching that you don't mulch too close to the base of the tree. For example, this apple over here. Most of the wood chips are actually on the perimeter. And every time, again, you go to watering your plant, the minerals and the vitamins and the energy of the wood chips that once upon a time made a tree is now going to be breaking down, enriching the soil, feeding all of the soil organisms, and ultimately benefiting the plant. But you want to make sure that these wood chips are not touching the actual bark of the tree. The bark of the plant is actually a non-living tissue. The living part of the plant is actually right underneath the bark, which is called the cambium layers. And the cambium layers, if this were the bark of the tree, being my hand, the cambium layers would lie just underneath the bark. And then so be sure when mulching to actually make sure that the mulch doesn't come in contact with the bark of the trees. you want to make sure that you leave at least a few inches to as much as a couple of feet, depending on the size of the tree, away from the tree trunk. The tree trunk is not the living tissue of the plant. And again, I'm going to actually make sure that I've got these wood chips away from the plant. And the reason being is we don't want the wood-boring insects and the insects that are actually consuming the organic matter here from consuming actually the bark of the plant as well. The bark is actually a non-living tissue, and it's composed of cellulose and is ideal food for insects. But we want to make sure we protect it by keeping the wood chips away. And in regards to the living tissue, if my fingers were the outer bark of the tree, the cambium tissue, which is the life of the tree that transports the waters and the sugars up and down the plant, is on the inside of the bark, just underneath the bark. And then the center part of the plant is the wood, and it provides the strength and the support to actually grow a very large tree. So the goal is to keep your wood chips away from the tree trunk, and what your wood chips offer is actually a way to keep the weeds down. And let me show you one more thing over here. So if we take a look in this zone, you'll notice that these wood chips have been down for several months and there's no weeds in this area. But in this area over here, underneath my lemon verbena, and this was, I just noticed it, this here is the stalks of the onion that was actually here, and these were supporting these flowers that were growing off of this, about 3 to 4 feet high, taller, actually off of these stalks. So it kind of went like that, and the flowers were on the tips. So I brought all this down, and that all happened within the last week, and then now you can see all of these seeds. Had there been wood chips over here, and that I was mulching this area, then none of these seeds would have actually taken. It would have been too shaded and impossible for these seeds to actually grow. But again, because this is the soil, these plants have actually taken off. So something to consider to keep your weeds down, mulching. And that concludes step number 9. Let's go to step 10. Where can I relax?
On that chair, the rocking chair.
What'll make me look like I'm relaxed?
Those chairs downstairs.
Where should I put it? Bring it up here and put it
No,
where?
just go downstairs.
I want to conclude my video. That looks nasty downstairs.
Okay, then you sit there.
Should I put it over here by my fountain?
No, just bring those chairs.
Did I put on your sunglasses, or won't let me touch them?
No.
Should I get my own?
Your head is too big. Why don't you sit over there, on
Where?
those chairs, on that bench? Lay down on the bench.
This is a good spot too.
Okay, you're down. Oh my God.
Don't be mean.
Don't be mean. I've been here for
running it. You stopped it, right?
I've been here for 2 hours.
And now here we are. We're finally at step number 10. And this is my favorite step. Step 10 is, it's time to relax. Simply being in your garden and breathing the oxygen-rich air that your plants are providing you with, as well as the bountiful fruits and vegetables and beautiful colors, and your California native, if you're in California, or wherever you live, your native plants that are supporting the local habitat. You've done your part, and by simply being in your garden and breathing, you're actually also giving your plants your carbon dioxide, which is the building blocks for their sugars, and in exchange, more oxygen back for all of us to enjoy. Again, I hope you found this video informative, and if so, be sure to like it, and most importantly, subscribe down below so you get connected to all the other educational IVOrganics 3-in-1 tree guard videos. Thanks again for watching. Happy gardening, and cheers.